That weekend, I was home alone. My parents had taken my little sister to spend the night at my aunt's place. She'd just had a baby, and they said it'd be noisy. I didn't want to go, and they were happy to have someone house sit, so they left me by myself. I didn't get out of bed until nearly 1 p.m. The sky outside was grey, and last night's snow still covered the ground. I grabbed some leftover lasagna from the fridge, reheated it in the microwave, poured a glass of orange juice from the bottle I hadn't finished, and ate at the kitchen table while scrolling through my phone. After I was done, I tossed the dishes in the sink, figured I'd wash them later, and curled up on the couch to watch a show. The TV was on, but the house was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I'm used to being alone, but sometimes the silence makes the house feel off. Around 4 in the afternoon, I went to the kitchen to get some water. As I passed the basement stairs, I heard a soft sound below, like something had rolled across the floor. The basement door was shut. I stood there for a few seconds, listening. Nothing. I figured it was the heating pipe shifting and didn't think much of it. I got my water and sat back down on the couch. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. She said they'd be back later than planned and asked if I remembered to lock the back door. I got up and checked. It was locked. The doormat was still in place. Just as I was about to head back to the living room, I heard another sound from the basement. This time it wasn't something rolling. It was a dull thump, like someone stepping on a wooden board. I froze. I stood at the top of the stairs and looked down. It was pitch black. I flipped the light switch. Nothing. Tried it again. Still nothing. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a flashlight, hesitated for a second, then made myself go down. Each step creaked a little. The flashlight beam jumped across the walls, stretching my shadow ahead of me. The air downstairs was damp. I muttered to myself that it was probably a loose pipe or maybe mice. The place was a mess. Old furniture, cardboard boxes, stuff stacked everywhere. I made a slow circle. Nothing looked out of place. Just as I turned to leave, the flashlight swept across something in the corner. A door. I had never seen it before. It was behind the washing machine, wooden, old, boarded up like it had always been there, just hidden. I pushed the washer to the side. The edge of the door came into view, with a rusted metal handle. I stood still. The door was shut tight, no gap underneath. I reached out and touched the handle. It was ice cold, like pulling metal straight from the freezer. I didn't open it. I had this very clear feeling in my chest. Don't touch that door. Not out of fear. Just, something wasn't right, like it didn't belong in our house. I slid the washer back, said nothing, thought nothing, walked upstairs. Locked the basement door behind me, sat down on the couch. The show was still playing on TV, but I wasn't watching. Around 9 p.m. I went to get more water. As I passed the basement, I heard a soft tapping. Knock, 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 like someone gently rapping on wood with their fingers. The rhythm was steady. I stood at the top of the stairs, feet rooted to the spot. Then it stopped. No footsteps. No doors opening, just silence, and then the basement light turned on by itself. I froze, then shouted, "That's enough." No response. Nothing happened. I ran to my room, slammed the door, locked it, dove under the blanket. I held my phone in my hand, eyes fixed on the door, waiting for a message from my parents. Around 10:30, Mom texted me a photo. They were with my cousin in front of a huge Christmas tree, all smiles. I asked what time they'd be home the next day. She said around noon. I didn't reply. I just kept scrolling until my eyes gave out and I finally fell asleep. I woke up once in the middle of the night. I could hear footsteps downstairs, slow, soft. I didn't get out of bed, didn't check the time. Just lay there with my eyes shut, waiting for it to stop. The next morning, I jumped out of bed and rushed to check the basement light. It was off. The door was still locked, hadn't been touched. I crouched down and looked through the gap. No light from below. I worked up the nerve to go down again, The basement looked the same. Nothing seemed different until I noticed the floor next to the washing machine. There was a drag mark, a faint, scuff line across the dusty concrete, leading from where the door had been to the middle of the room. I pulled the washing machine aside. The door was gone. I turned on every light. Checked every inch. That whole wall was now just concrete. Solid, no seam, no gap, no door. When my parents got home, I didn't tell them anything. They asked if I'd eaten properly, if I'd slept okay. I said I had. A few days later, I went down with a laundry basket. On the steps, I heard a single creak, like someone shifting their weight on an old wooden board. The sound was close, but I didn't see anything. I turned around, went back upstairs. Just as I opened the door, I heard it a soft, low sound, like a wooden door quietly closing. And then, silence. One day after school, I was walking home later than usual. I'd stayed behind for a club meeting, then went to the library to look up some things. By the time I left campus, the sky had turned a dim, orange-grey. There weren't many people on the street. I took my usual shortcut through an old residential neighborhood. Some of the lawns were overgrown. A few mailboxes were leaning sideways. It was never a busy area to begin with, but I always walked a little faster on this stretch. The water bottle in my backpack swayed with every step. I hadn't eaten dinner yet, and my stomach was starting to feel empty. All I could think about was getting home and heating up some of that leftover chicken and corn chowder. Usually, there'd be a few other students around at this time. But that day, the whole street was oddly quiet. Other than a couple of squirrels digging under trees, it was just me. My footsteps crunched against the gravel sidewalk in a steady rhythm. I zipped up my jacket a little more, felt like the air had dropped a few degrees all of a sudden. As I neared Fifth Street, I saw a girl standing under a streetlight. Her arms hung at her sides, body completely stiff. She looked about my age, wearing a grey hoodie and jeans. A few dead leaves clung to her shoes. Her head was tilted down, not in a shy or sad way, but like she wasn't even sure why she was standing there. I didn't plan on saying anything. These days, people do all kinds of weird stuff on the street. Maybe her phone died. Maybe she was waiting for someone, but as I walked past her, she suddenly lifted her head and looked right at me. There was nothing particularly strange about her eyes, no creepy smile, no blank stare, just calm, like she was trying to figure out who I was. I didn't stop walking, pretended I didn't notice. But I could feel her following me, not running. Just walking slowly right behind me. I could hear the shuffle of her shoes through the fallen leaves. The rhythm didn't match mine. It felt off. I took a detour through a different block to see if she'd peel off in another direction. But no matter where I turned, she stayed behind me. At one point, I caught her in the corner of my same walk, head slightly down, shoulders tense, like she was holding something in. I started walking faster. Not enough to look panicked. This was my neighborhood, my turf, but enough to create distance. Just before I reached my street, I slipped into a narrow alley, a shortcut between two wooden fences, just wide enough for one person to walk through. Hardly anyone knew about it. I figured there was no way she'd follow me in. I was wrong. I'd barely made it halfway down when I heard the same footsteps enter behind me, louder now. There were no leaves here, just the crunch of gravel and the groan of old wood boards under our feet. I spun around. She was 5 steps away. She didn't speak, didn't move. Just stood there, staring. Her face was completely blank. The wind picked up suddenly, lifting the bottom of her hoodie. And I caught a smell: wet wood, not sweat, not perfume. Damp and earthy, like the inside of a basement. I didn't ask why she was following me. I wasn't even sure she could answer. I stared at her for a few seconds, then turned and walked away. Not running, just moving with purpose, but I could hear her walking again. Her steps were heavier now. Each footfall made the stones underneath thud. She was getting closer. Right as I neared the end of the alley, I slammed my shoulder into a metal trash can and knocked it over. It crashed against the ground with a loud, echoing clang. I didn't know why I did it, maybe just to make some noise, alert someone, anyone. The trash can rolled out of the alley. I ran after it and burst onto the sidewalk. Night had fully fallen. Streetlights were flickering on one by one. My house was right across the street, but I didn't go straight home. Instead, I ducked behind the tree at the corner and peeked back at the alley. She didn't come out. I waited a full minute. Still nothing. The alley was completely quiet, like nothing had ever happened. The trash can was still lying in the road, and a stray cat was sniffing around inside it. I stayed there for a long time, until someone from the neighbor's house came out to take their trash. I acted like I'd just gotten home and quickly ran to my front door. That night, I didn't say anything. I ate the lasagna my mom had made and went straight to my room. Lying in bed, I could still smell that damp basement odor, like it had soaked into my clothes, my hair like I couldn't wash it off. The next day after school, I took the long way home. I didn't dare walk down that shortcut again. I woke up early on the day of my surgery. No food, no water, just this hollow, scraped out feeling in my stomach. Before they wheeled me into the OR, the nurse asked me to lock up my belongings in the cabinet next to the bed. I did as I was told. The surgery was expected to take about 3 hours, and afterward, I'd be brought back to the same room. It was a shared room, but the other bed was empty when I first arrived. No sheets, no bags. The nurse said no one else was scheduled to be admitted, so I'd have the space to myself. I didn't ask questions. Honestly, I welcomed the quiet. I don't remember much about the procedure. The anesthesia knocked me out cold. When I came to, I felt sticky all over. My throat was dry, and I had a wave of nausea rolling through me. I was already back in my room. The sky outside tinted that warm, yellowish hue that meant it was evening. A nurse came by to check my IV and adjust the temperature of the water next to me. She offered me some saltine crackers. I nodded, but didn't take a bite. My stomach was already on edge, and I didn't want to push it. By 8 o'clock, the hospital grew eerily quiet. The sounds of footsteps, carts, conversations, all the daytime background noise just cut off, like someone flipped a switch. I pressed the call button. A nurse came in and helped me adjust my position so I could lie on my side more comfortably. She told me they were short-staffed tonight, but if I needed anything, just press the button again. I thanked her, turned off the reading light, and left only the small motion-activated lamp near the door. My body felt completely worn out, but my brain wouldn't shut down. I just lay there, listening to the IV drip tick, 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 watching the sliver of light stretch across the wall, waiting for sleep to finally win. Around 2 a.m. I woke up suddenly. No dream. No sound, just awake. The room was still dim. The IV kept dripping rhythmically. I glanced toward the door. The little light was still on, but something felt off. I looked to the side and froze. The bed that had been empty when I came in, the one with no sheets, had a shadow sitting on it. Not a shadow cast on the wall, a figure, something solid. Someone was sitting there, head bowed, face hidden, completely still. I stared for a few seconds, and one thing was very clear. That wasn't a nurse. Nurses don't sit silently at the edge of a patient's bed in the middle of the night. I reached for the call button, but my hand stopped midair. I didn't dare make a sound, didn't dare move. The IV drip suddenly seemed louder, each drop like it was splattering against the wall, right next to that figure. It didn't move, but then I heard a sound. A faint, sharp click, like when your teeth accidentally bite down on your tongue. A short, dry snap. Then, after a pause, it came again. The figure began to shift. It didn't stand. It didn't turn. It dragged itself toward me inch by inch, sliding across the bed, as if its knees weren't bending, just its thighs and shins, working together in a strange, a natural motion. The metal bed frame creaked softly as it moved. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. It was like my whole body had gone numb, pinned down. The figure crept closer, and the pain from my surgical wound pulsed with each slow breath. Just as it reached the edge of my bed, the door creaked open, and a nurse stepped in. She looked at me and whispered, "Are you okay?" In that moment the figure vanished, not walked away, not melted, just gone. I managed a slight nod. My voice was barely there. Is there someone in the other bed?" The nurse checked my fore and casually said, "Nope. You're the only one in here tonight." I didn't say another word. She pulled the blanket higher up over me, and said she'd check on me again later, told me to get some rest. I heard the door shut behind her, but my heartbeat didn't slow down for a long time. In the morning, I pretended everything was fine. When the nurse came to take my temperature, I smiled and said I slept okay. She told me they'd be admitting a new patient around noon and asked if I could tidy up my bedside a little to make space. I nodded. But I never once looked at the other bed. At noon, the new patient arrived, a man in his 50s with a cast on his leg. His wife helped set up his things and smiled at me politely. I acted normal, but deep down, I still felt like that bed wasn't clean. Not in a physical way, something else. That night, we didn't interact much. He snored like a freight train, but honestly, it was comforting. At least this time, there was actually someone there. I could hear him, see him. He was real. On the third day, I was discharged. As the nurse handed me my paperwork, she laughed and said I'd been one of their quietest patients, seemed like I actually enjoyed my stay. I smiled, nodded, didn't say a word more. Then I walked out of that room as fast as I could.